This is body weight and its correlation to fastball speed. Baseball has been America's pastime for 150 years. As the game has evolved, it has become imperative that pitchers increase their fastball speed as hitters have become better and better throughout time. Pitching is very interesting as it is mostly to do with training and not as much talent or athleticism. There are many cases of people with very little pitching background who have found the right type of training and have increased their velocity tremendously. With that being said, what is the best training for a pitcher aspiring to throw harder? The old theory suggests that getting as muscular and large as possible directly correlates to throwing harder. This theory is derived from Newton's second law of motion, force equals mass times acceleration. The goal for my research is to disprove this claim with looking at statistics from MLB pitchers. My research question is, does weight have a correlation to throwing speed? And my hypothesis is, weight does not directly correlate to pitch speed. Other factors are a much better predictor of pitch speed. So, in the studies that I looked at, the one entitled Individual Factors Associated with Baseball Pitching Performance, Scoping Review, this focuses on tests that determine positive correlation arm strength. So the whole point of the article or the paper was to look at certain tests that can be done and to see if these tests will correlate with arm strength. They looked at certain types of movements with the arms, certain types of isometrical movements, and then they tested, does this correlate with throwing hard? And in their research, they found that most of the positive correlations were not in the upper body, but were found in lower body exams. For instance, they tested the triple extenders. They tested like being the hip, knee, and ankle. They tested certain movements with medicine balls, and that proved to them that those have a positive correlation with pitch speed and not just plain muscle strength. The other study I looked at was there's a science behind more high velocity pitches, but there is also a cost. This article is focused on the fact that better hitters mean that pitchers need to throw more pitches in order to be successful. So, kind of to break that down, as hitters are getting better, they can hit faster speeds better. So velocity does not mean as much. So pitchers now, instead of throwing mostly fastballs like they used to and trying to just kind of blow it by guys, they focus more on throwing other off-speed pitches like curveballs, sliders, cutters, sinkers, changeups. And in focusing on these, they throw less fastballs. So when they need to throw a fastball, they can throw it at a higher intent as they're not tired from throwing other pitches or for throwing more fastballs. They're kind of preserving their arm, throwing pitches that don't take full-on effort to throw. And it also shows that the higher on average pitchers throw, the more injuries there have been. So the harder that guys have been throwing, especially in recent years, in the study it talked about how in the last 10 years, there has been more 100-mile-an-hour pitches than there has been in the entire history of baseball prior. And there's been more and more injuries, common injury being Tommy John surgery, which is UCL reconstructive surgery. So these studies disprove that weight is kind of the big telling factor because it shows in two examples here that like the first article is more movement based, and that proves that again that weight does not have a direct correlation. And it also in the second article it was talking about how pitchers kind of conserving their energy throughout games leads them to throw harder, not again body weight. So in my research, there were certain variables. In terms of data, I would be looking at the heights and weights of MLB pitchers and graphing their fastball velocity as well as their peak speed. And to do that, I'd be using databases such as MLB.com, which has basically all of the stats from every player, including their height and weight, obviously, and BaseballReference.com, where I can kind of narrow my search down to harder throwers and look at what their height and weights are. I will also be looking into the success rates of higher velocity pitchers using stats such as ERA, WHIP, WAR, and hits per nine. And in doing this, I kind of wanted to be able to get something out of my research other than what training would be better. I kind of wanted to see what leads to more success. So is throwing hard does it even have a point to it anymore as hitters have gotten better? So I was looking at how higher velocity pitchers stack up in these categories. And in terms of ethical consideration, I do not believe that ethical consideration would be an issue, as I'm just looking at the height and weight as well as pitch speed and some other statistics. In my research, I plan on taking the variables to see what heights and weights produce the hardest throwers. If my hypothesis is correct, then the data points in my scatter plot will be pretty evenly spread. This chart will look similar to these. So this is a chart that I found on a website kind of talking about the same thing that I'm talking about, and it shows that the majority of pitchers are kind of in the middle. So in terms of weight, they're very much in the middle, and it's kind of evenly spread all over.